3 months before Naomi walked down the aisle to marry the love of her life, she discovered he'd been sleeping with someone else for half a year. But here's what destroyed her even more than the affair itself. He still wanted to marry her. Naomi believed in fairy tales. She believed in soulmates, in destiny, in the kind of love that poets write about and movies are made from. At 23, fresh out of college with a graphic design degree and stars in her eyes, she met Ryan at a mutual friend's birthday party, and everything she believed about love seemed to click into place. He was 25, worked in tech sales, and had the kind of confidence that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. Within days, he was sending flowers to her office. Within weeks, he was planning elaborate dates, picnics in the park, midnight drives to watch the sunrise, handwritten notes tucked into her coat pockets. Naomi felt like she was living inside one of those romantic comedies she'd watched 100 times, except this time she was the protagonist, and the ending was guaranteed to be happy. 6 months in, they moved in together. Ryan's apartment became their apartment. His life became their life. And exactly 1 year after that first conversation at the birthday party, on a beach at sunset with rose petals scattered across the sand, Ryan got down on one knee and pulled out a ring, the exact ring Naomi had casually mentioned loving months earlier, thinking he hadn't been paying attention. But he had been. He remembered everything, every detail, every dream she'd whispered in the dark. She said yes before he even finished asking. The next 2 years were consumed by wedding planning, and Naomi threw herself into it with the devotion of someone building a cathedral. She created a Pinterest board that swelled to 847 pins. She booked the venue a full year in advance, a gorgeous garden estate with string lights and a gazebo where she'd say her vows. She found the dress, the one that made her cry in the fitting room, while her mother and best friend Jenna stood behind her with tears streaming down their faces. She taste-tested 17 different caterers. She interviewed 12 photographers. She hand-selected flowers for each table arrangement. Every choice, every detail, every decision was made with the same thought looping through her mind: this is forever. This is the beginning of the rest of my life. And Ryan seemed just as invested. He called her my future wife in front of friends, said it with pride, with ownership, with certainty. They talked about the house they'd buy after the wedding, the neighborhood with good schools where they'd raise their kids, the vacation they'd take every year to the same beach town. They planned their forever with the same meticulous care Naomi put into choosing napkin colors and seating charts. There were no doubts, no red flags, no warning signs that anything was wrong. Or maybe there were, and Naomi was too blinded by love to see them. 3 months before the wedding, 90 days before Naomi was supposed to walk down that aisle in her perfect dress to marry her perfect man, her phone rang at work. Jenna's name flashed on the screen, and when Naomi answered, her best friend's voice was shaking so hard she could barely form words. "Naomi, I need to tell you something, and you're going to hate me for it." The office noise faded into static. Naomi's fingers went cold around her phone. "What's wrong?" "I saw Ryan last night, at that restaurant downtown, the Italian place." "Okay." Naomi's mind scrambled for context. "He said he had a work dinner." The pause on the other end of the line lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds that felt like falling off a cliff in slow motion. He wasn't at a work dinner, Naomi. He was on a date, with a woman, and they were... Jenna's voice cracked. They were kissing. The world tilted sideways. Naomi gripped the edge of her desk, trying to anchor herself to something solid, something real. "That's impossible. You must have seen someone who looked like him. It's a common mistake. People look alike all the time." I confronted him. Jenna was crying now, full sobs breaking through the phone. I walked right up to their table. I looked him in the eyes. It was him, Naomi. He tried to deny it at first, and then he asked me not to tell you. He begged me not to tell you. Naomi left work without telling anyone where she was going. She drove home with her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the steering wheel, ran 3 red lights, and didn't even notice. When she walked into the apartment, their apartment, the one they'd furnished together, the one with their names both on the lease, Ryan was sitting on the couch playing video games like it was just another ordinary Tuesday evening. He looked up when she walked in, smiled that easy smile she'd fallen in love with, and said, "Hey, babe, you're home early. Where were you last night?" The smile faltered, just for a second, just long enough for Naomi to see the truth before he even opened his mouth. "Work dinner. I told you that. Don't lie to me." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Jenna saw you. At the restaurant. With her." Ryan's face went through 5 different expressions in 3 seconds. Denial, panic, calculation, defeat, and finally, tears. He stood up from the couch, reached for her, and Naomi stepped back like he'd pulled a knife. "It was a mistake," he said. "It didn't mean anything. She doesn't mean anything. How long?" "Naomi, please." "How long have you been cheating on me?" His shoulders slumped. The tears were real now, streaming down his face, and Naomi felt nothing but a cold, spreading numbness. 6 months. "But babe, I love you." "She's nothing. I was going to end it before the wedding, I swear." 6 months? The words came out as a whisper, then a scream. 6 months? We've been planning our wedding for 6 months. You proposed to me while you were sleeping with someone else? I got scared about getting married, and she was there, and it just happened. Who is she? Ryan hesitated, and in that hesitation, Naomi understood this wasn't some random hookup at a bar. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a moment of weakness. Her name is Ashley. She works at my company, a coworker, someone he saw every single day. Every time he'd kissed Naomi goodbye and left for the office, he was going to see her. Every time he'd come home and held Naomi in his arms and told her he loved her, he'd been with Ashley hours before. 6 months of lies. 6 months of betrayal. 6 months of living a double life, while Naomi planned centerpieces and debated between salmon and chicken for the reception dinner. But the worst part, the part that would haunt Naomi for years afterward, was what Ryan said next. "We can work through this. Couples survive infidelity all the time. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I love you, Naomi. I still want to marry you." He stood there, tears on his face, begging her to forgive him, to give him another chance, to pretend the last 6 months hadn't happened. He wanted to marry her. He wanted to stand at that altar in 3 months and promise to love her and cherish her and be faithful to her, after he'd already broken every promise that mattered. "Get out," Naomi said. "Naomi, please. We can fix this. Get out." He left. The door clicked shut behind him, and Naomi collapsed on the floor of the apartment they'd shared for 3 years and sobbed until she couldn't breathe, until her throat was raw, until the sun came up and painted the walls gold, and she realized she had to cancel a wedding that was 90 days away. When the person you trusted most in the world shatters that trust completely, is it possible to ever believe in anyone again? Or does betrayal permanently break something inside you that can never truly heal? 1 year after Ryan destroyed everything Naomi believed about love, she sat across from a middle school counselor and felt something she thought she'd never feel again, the faintest flicker of hope. But hope, she'd learned, was just another word for vulnerability, and vulnerability was the gateway to devastation. So when Caleb looked at her with those honest eyes and asked if she was okay, Naomi did what she'd perfected over 12 months of survival. She lied, she deflected, and she built her walls higher. The wreckage Ryan left behind wasn't just emotional. It was financial, social, and deeply psychological. Naomi had spent the weeks after their breakup making phone call after humiliating phone call, cancelling a wedding that had cost her $15,000 in non-refundable deposits. The venue coordinator had sighed with practiced sympathy and explained that, unfortunately, personal circumstances don't qualify for refunds. The florist had been kinder, offering to give her half the deposit back as a courtesy, which still meant Naomi lost $1,200 on flowers she'd never see. The photographer had been blunt. "I've already turned down 3 other bookings for your date. The contract is binding." Every conversation was a fresh wound. Every lost dollar, a reminder that Ryan hadn't just broken her heart. He'd stolen her savings, her dignity, and her faith in happy endings. But worse than the money was the shame. Everyone knew. Her family, his family, their mutual friends, her co-workers, the barista at the coffee shop where Ryan used to pick up her favorite latte every Friday morning. The pity in their eyes was unbearable. Some people offered unwanted advice disguised as concern. Maybe you should forgive him. Marriage is hard. And at least he was honest eventually. Others asked invasive questions. Did you suspect anything? How did you not know? What does she look like? And then there were the friends, people Naomi had considered close, who chose Ryan's side, who said she was overreacting or throwing away 4 years over one mistake, who stayed. Friends with Ryan and Ashley when they started dating publicly just weeks after the breakup, confirming what Naomi had known in her gut. This wasn't an affair Ryan wanted to end. It was a relationship he wanted to continue. By the time Naomi turned 28, she'd rebuilt the external pieces of her life with impressive efficiency. She moved out of her parents' house and into a small one-bedroom apartment with exposed brick and windows that let in good light. She'd grown her freelance graphic design business, landing clients who paid well and respected her work. She reconnected with friends who hadn't abandoned her during the Ryan implosion. On paper, she was thriving. In reality, she was surviving, and there's a universe of difference between the two. The trust issues infected everything like a virus she couldn't cure. In dating, she'd been on exactly 5 first dates in 12 months, and every single one had ended in disaster. Not because the men were terrible, but because Naomi couldn't stop interrogating them like a detective investigating a crime that hadn't happened yet. Are you seeing anyone else? Do you have a girlfriend? An ex-girlfriend you're still hung up on? Why are you really single? She'd pull up their social media profiles during the date, sometimes while they were in the bathroom, sometimes right in front of them, searching for evidence of deception. When one man's phone buzzed during dinner and he glanced at it, Naomi snapped, "Who's texting you? Your other date?" He'd looked at her like she was unhinged, paid for his half of the meal, and left. He wasn't wrong to leave. Naomi knew she was broken. She just didn't know how to fix it. But the trust issues weren't limited to romance. Naomi questioned her friends constantly. If someone cancelled plans, she assumed they were lying about why. If a friend took too long to respond to a text, Naomi convinced herself they were talking about her behind her back, laughing at the girl who'd been too stupid to see her fiancé was cheating. She'd lost 2 friendships because people found her suspicion exhausting, told her she needed therapy, told her she was pushing everyone away. They were right, of course. Naomi was in therapy. It helped. Sometimes. But knowing intellectually that not everyone would betray her didn't stop the panic attacks when she tried to let her guard down. At work, she overchecked every collaborator's contributions, assumed clients would try to cheat her on payments, and struggled to delegate even the smallest tasks because trusting someone else meant accepting the possibility they'd let her down. Her therapist called it hypervigilance born from trauma. Naomi called it pattern recognition. After all, she'd trusted Ryan completely, and look where that got her. The day Naomi met Caleb, she wasn't looking for love, hope, or healing. She was just trying to help her younger brother. Tyler, 16 and struggling, had been getting bullied at school for months. He'd grown withdrawn, stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria, started making excuses to stay home sick. When their parents finally got him to open up about what was happening, they immediately scheduled a meeting with the school counselor. Naomi offered to come along for moral support, mostly because she knew Tyler looked up to her and might feel braver with his big sister there. The counselor's office was small but warm. Walls covered in student artwork, a bookshelf full of young adult novels, a desk that looked lived in rather than sterile. And behind that desk sat Caleb, 30 years old, with kind eyes and an easy smile that didn't feel performative. Naomi's immediate instinct was suspicion. She'd learned that charm was often a mask for something darker, but as she watched Caleb interact with Tyler, something in her assessment shifted. Caleb didn't talk down to Tyler. He didn't minimize the bullying or offer empty platitudes about how kids will be kids. Instead, he asked questions that actually listened for the answers. How does it make you feel when they say those things? What do you wish you could say back? What would make you feel safe at school? Tyler, who'd been silent and shut down for weeks, started talking. Really talking. And Caleb listened with a kind of attention that made you feel like nothing else in the world mattered more than what you were saying in that moment. After the session, as Naomi's family was leaving, Caleb walked them out. He crouched down to Tyler's level and said, You did great today, Tyler. I'm proud of you for being brave enough to talk about this. Tyler gave a small smile, the first Naomi had seen in weeks. Then Caleb stood and turned to Naomi. You must be Tyler's sister? Naomi was surprised. How did you know? Caleb's smile was genuine, unguarded. He mentioned you. Said you're his favorite person. Something about the simplicity of that interaction caught Naomi off guard. There was no angle, no hidden agenda, no attempt to impress or manipulate. Just a straightforward observation delivered with warmth. Naomi wasn't used to straightforward anymore. He's a good kid, she managed. He is, and he's lucky to have a sister who shows up for him. It was a throwaway compliment, the kind of thing people say to be polite. Except Caleb said it like he meant it, and Naomi hadn't felt genuinely seen, not assessed, not pitied, not judged, but actually seen, in longer than she could remember. Over the next several weeks, Naomi drove Tyler to his counseling sessions with Caleb. She'd wait in the parking lot or grab coffee at the shop across the street, and when she came back to pick Tyler up, she and Caleb would have brief conversations, 5 minutes, maybe 10, nothing deep. They talked about Tyler's progress, the weather, a documentary Caleb had watched, a design project Naomi was working on, surface-level small talk, the kind of interaction you'd have with a friendly acquaintance. Except Naomi found herself looking forward to those 5-minute conversations in a way that unsettled her. Caleb was easy to talk to, but not in the way Ryan had been easy. Ryan's charm had been deliberate, calculated to make you feel special. Caleb's ease felt different, effortless, like he was just being himself. And if you liked it, great, and if you didn't, that was okay too. There was no performance, no agenda, no sense that he was trying to impress her or win her over, which made it all the more surprising when, after about a month of these brief interactions, Caleb mentioned he was organizing a community art project for the school, a mural that students would paint together to promote anti-bullying, and he needed a graphic designer to help create promotional materials. It's volunteer work, he added quickly, so no pressure. But Tyler mentioned you're a designer, and I thought I'd ask. If you're too busy, I completely understand. Naomi's immediate reaction was to say no. She didn't do volunteer work. She didn't have time for unpaid projects. She didn't want to get involved in anything that required sustained interaction with new people, new vulnerability, new opportunities for disappointment. I don't really do volunteer work, she said, hoping that would be the end of it. Caleb just smiled, that same easy, unforced smile. No worries. I figured I'd ask. The offer's open if you change your mind. He didn't push, didn't guilt-trip her about helping kids or making a difference in the community, didn't try to convince her or negotiate. He just offered and accepted her refusal with the same grace he'd offered the opportunity. A week later, Naomi surprised herself by sending Caleb an email with 3 words. I'll help out. She told herself it was for Tyler. That seeing his counselor work on something positive might help her brother's healing. That it would be good portfolio material, even if it was unpaid. She told herself a dozen rational reasons that had nothing to do with the fact that Caleb's refusal to pressure her had made her want to say yes. The art project meetings started weekly, Wednesday evenings at a coffee shop near the school, just Naomi and Caleb, laptops open, sketching ideas for posters and flyers, and a design template students could use for the mural. On the surface, they were just 2 professionals collaborating on a community initiative. Underneath, for Naomi, every interaction was a test. She didn't do it consciously at first. The testing was instinctive, automatic, the way your hand jerks back from a hot stove before your brain registers pain. Naomi's nervous system had been rewired by betrayal, and now it scanned every interaction for signs of danger, for proof that trust was foolish and everyone lied eventually. The first test came during their second meeting. Caleb's phone buzzed on the table between them, a text notification lighting up the screen. Naomi's entire body tensed. Ryan used to flip his phone face down the second it buzzed, would angle his body away from her when he typed responses, would get defensive if she so much as glanced in the direction of his screen. So when Caleb's phone lit up, Naomi watched him the way a rabbit watches a circling hawk. Caleb glanced at the screen and said, without hesitation, "Sorry, it's my mom." Mind if I text her back real quick? He picked up the phone, typed a response, right there, in plain view, making no effort to hide the screen, set it back down, and returned his attention to the poster mock-up they'd been discussing. No secrecy, no sudden shift in body language, no defensive explanation about why his mom was texting or what she wanted. Just normalcy. Naomi didn't know what to do with normalcy anymore. The second test came the following week, when Naomi asked, trying to sound casual, what Caleb had done over the weekend. It was a simple question, the kind of small talk coworkers make on Monday morning. But Naomi was listening for vagueness, for gaps in the timeline, for the kind of non-answer Ryan used to give when he'd actually been with Ashley. Caleb said, "Honestly, pretty boring weekend. I binge-watched this show my sister recommended. It's about a chef who's kind of a disaster, very stressful but weirdly addictive. Went grocery shopping on Saturday. Meal prepped for the week. Called my parents on Sunday. That's about it." The specificity caught Naomi off guard. He named the show, mentioned his sister's recommendation, gave her actual activities with actual timeline. There was no dodge, no deflection, no carefully crafted story that sounded too perfect to be true. Just a guy who'd had a quiet weekend and didn't feel the need to make it sound more interesting than it was. Naomi wanted to believe him. She also wanted to protect herself from being fooled again. The two desires warred inside her constantly. The third test happened accidentally, which somehow made it worse. Naomi and Caleb were working at the coffee shop when a woman walked in, mid-30s, pretty, confident, and spotted Caleb. Her face lit up. She walked straight over to their table. "Caleb! Oh my God, I thought that was you." Every alarm in Naomi's body started screaming. Female friend, unexpected appearance, familiar enough to approach without hesitation. She watched Caleb's reaction, like her life depended on correctly interpreting it. Caleb looked up, surprised but pleased. "Rachel." "Hey." He stood, gave her a brief hug, then immediately turned to Naomi. "Naomi, this is Rachel. We went to college together. Rachel, this is Naomi. She's helping me with the anti-bullying art project at school." Rachel smiled warmly at Naomi. "Nice to meet you." Caleb mentioned this project. "It sounds amazing." They chatted for maybe 3 minutes. Rachel was in town visiting family. Caleb asked about her job in Boston. She asked about his work at the school. Normal catch-up conversation between old friends. And then Rachel said she had to run, hugged Caleb again, told Naomi it was nice to meet her, and left. The entire interaction was aggressively normal. No weird energy, no lingering looks. No inside jokes that excluded Naomi or made her feel like an outsider. Caleb had introduced Naomi immediately, provided context for their relationship, and treated the whole thing like the unremarkable coincidence it was. But Naomi's brain, damaged and suspicious, kept turning the interaction over and over. Was Rachel really just a college friend? Did Caleb introduce Naomi to establish boundaries, or was the introduction itself a performance? How did Rachel know about the art project unless Caleb talked about Naomi to other people? And if he talked about her, what did he say? That night, alone in her apartment, Naomi did what she swore she wouldn't do. She looked up Caleb's social media. His profiles were public. Facebook, Instagram, nothing hidden. She scrolled through photos of family gatherings, hiking trips with friends, student events at the school where faces were blurred for privacy. There were pictures of Caleb with various women, but they were clearly labeled. His sister Caroline, his mom Linda, his coworker Jessica from the counseling department, Rachel from college in old throwback photos. No girlfriend, no suspicious relationship, no pattern of behavior that suggested he was hiding anything. Naomi felt ashamed for checking. She also felt temporarily relieved. Then she felt angry at herself for needing relief in the first place. This was why her last 5 dates had failed. She couldn't just exist in a normal interaction without analyzing it to death, without searching for proof of inevitable betrayal. 3 months into working on the art project, Naomi and Caleb had fallen into an easy rhythm. The project was coming together beautifully. Students were excited, parents were supportive, local businesses had donated supplies. Tyler was doing better too, more confident at school, starting to trust that the adults in his life could actually help him. Everything was progressing exactly as it should, which is probably why Naomi's defenses finally cracked. They were at the coffee shop on a Wednesday evening, reviewing the final poster designs before sending them to print. The work was essentially done. They'd succeeded. And suddenly the reality hit Naomi that once this project wrapped up, she'd have no reason to see Caleb every week. No reason to have these conversations that had become the highlight of her Wednesday evenings, though she'd never admit that out loud. Caleb closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair, studying Naomi with that direct but not aggressive gaze he had. "Can I ask you something personal? You don't have to answer." Naomi's entire body went rigid. "Okay." "You seem guarded, like you're constantly waiting for something bad to happen, like you're bracing for impact all the time." He said it gently, with concern rather than judgment. "Is everything okay?" The walls went up instantly. "I'm fine." "Okay." Caleb nodded, accepting her deflection without pushing. "I didn't mean to pry," and that's what broke her. The fact that he didn't push. Ryan would have pushed, would have prodded and guilt-tripped and made it about him, about how her walls hurt his feelings, about how she needed to let him in. But Caleb just accepted her boundary and prepared to move on, and something about that acceptance made Naomi want to tear the boundary down herself. "My fiancé cheated on me." The words came out in a rush, like poison she'd been holding in her mouth for too long. "We were supposed to get married. I found out 3 months before the wedding. He'd been having an affair for 6 months, with a coworker. So yeah, I'm guarded." Caleb's expression shifted, not to pity, which Naomi couldn't have handled, but to something deeper, understanding, empathy, anger on her behalf. "Naomi, I'm so sorry. I can't even imagine." "Yeah, well." Naomi's laugh was bitter. "Now you know why I'm such a mess. Why I can't just be normal around people. Why I assume everyone's lying. You're not a mess." Caleb's voice was firm. "You're someone who was deeply hurt by someone you trusted. That's not the same thing. I can't trust anyone anymore." The confession felt like admitting to a terminal diagnosis. "I look at every person, friends, dates, clients, and I assume they're lying. I assume they'll hurt me eventually. It's exhausting, and I hate it, and I don't know how to stop." Caleb was quiet for a moment, thinking. When he spoke, his words were careful, considered. "That's not your fault. That's what betrayal does. It makes you question everything. It rewires your brain to prioritize self-protection over connection. So what? I'm just broken forever. I'll never be able to trust again." "I don't think you're broken." Caleb leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I think you're healing. And I think trust isn't something you just decide to give again. It's something that gets built slowly, through consistency, through people showing up the way they say they will, through actions matching words over and over until the pattern becomes undeniable. You make it sound easy. It's not easy. But I think it's possible." He paused. "I think you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. You got hurt badly, and you're still here, still showing up, still helping Tyler, still working on this project, still trying. That takes courage." Naomi felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She wasn't going to cry in a coffee shop. She wasn't going to let Caleb see just how damaged she really was. How do you know when someone's worth trusting again? The question came out smaller than she intended. Caleb thought about it. "I guess you watch what they do when it doesn't benefit them, to be honest. You watch what they do when they think no one's looking. You watch if their behavior stays consistent across time and circumstances." He met her eyes. "And you give yourself permission to trust slowly, in small increments, not all at once." After that conversation, something shifted. Not dramatically. There was no movie moment where orchestral music swelled and Naomi's walls came tumbling down. But gradually, incrementally, Naomi started paying attention to Caleb's patterns in a different way. Not searching for evidence of deception, but noticing evidence of consistency. He said he'd send her the updated file by Friday. He sent it Thursday evening. He mentioned he'd check with the school principal about wall space for the mural. He followed up the next day with a confirmed location and dimensions. He told Naomi he was going to a family dinner Sunday and would be unavailable. Sunday night, he texted a photo of his niece covered in spaghetti sauce with the caption, "Family dinner was chaotic. Hope you had a good weekend." Small things, unremarkable things, but they added up to a pattern. Caleb did what he said he'd do. His words matched his actions. There were no gaps, no inconsistencies, no moments where Naomi had to wonder if he was telling the truth. And it wasn't just about the project. Caleb's behavior was consistent across contexts. Naomi saw how he interacted with Tyler, patient, honest, following through on every promise he made. She saw how he talked about his family, with genuine affection, no drama or complaint. She overheard him on the phone once with a friend who was going through a breakup, and Caleb's advice was straightforward and kind. You deserve someone who treats you well. Don't settle for less just because you're lonely. Naomi realized she was watching Caleb the way you'd watch a TV show where you know the plot twist is coming, except weeks turned into months, and there was no twist. Just a man who showed up consistently, treated people with respect, and seemed genuinely comfortable with who he was. It was unsettling. Naomi didn't know what to do with a man who had no hidden agenda. Around month 4 of working together, Naomi caught herself thinking about Caleb when he wasn't around, wondering what he'd think about a design choice, wanting to text him about something funny that happened, looking forward to Wednesday evenings in a way that had nothing to do with the art project and everything to do with the man sitting across from her. She tried to shut it down, tried to remind herself that catching feelings was dangerous, that vulnerability led to devastation, that she'd sworn off relationships until she fixed whatever was broken inside her. But feelings, inconveniently, don't respond to logical arguments. The art project was nearing completion. Students had started painting the mural, a beautiful collaborative piece about inclusion and kindness. The posters Naomi designed were hanging in hallways throughout the school. Tyler was thriving, his confidence rebuilt, his bullies dealt with through a combination of counseling and administrative intervention. By every measure, the project was a massive success, which meant it was almost over, which meant Naomi was about to lose her weekly excuse to see Caleb. The thought shouldn't have bothered her as much as it did. The mural launch celebration happened on a Saturday afternoon in late spring. The whole community showed up, students, parents, teachers, local artists who donated time and materials. The finished mural was stunning, 20 feet of vibrant color and hopeful messages, painted by dozens of kids who'd poured their hearts into every brushstroke. Naomi stood next to Caleb, watching a group of 6th graders pose for photos in front of their work. Tyler was among them, grinning, looking happier than Naomi had seen him in over a year. "This wouldn't have happened without you," Caleb said quietly. "The design, the vision, the way you got the students excited about it. Thank you. You did most of the work," Naomi deflected. "We did it together." Caleb turned to look at her. That's what made it good. There was something in his tone, something more than professional appreciation. Naomi's heart started beating faster. "Caleb, can I ask you something?" "Always. Why are you single?" The question came out more blunt than she intended. "You're kind, you're honest, you're good with kids, you have a stable job, you're not a disaster. What's wrong with you?" Caleb laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. "Wow, okay. Straight to the hard questions. I'm serious. There has to be something. A secret gambling addiction. You're actually married. You collect human teeth as a hobby." "No teeth collection, I promise." Caleb's smile faded into something more thoughtful. "I've been told I'm too boring, too straightforward. No drama, no excitement, no mystery. Apparently being direct about what you want and what you feel isn't attractive. It's too predictable. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." "Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence." Naomi took a breath. This was it. The moment where she either protected herself or took a risk. Where she either stayed behind her walls or started tearing them down brick by brick. "I'm terrified of trusting someone again," she said. "But if I were going to try, I think it would be with someone like you." Caleb went very still. Someone like me, or me specifically. The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. "You specifically," Caleb exhaled slowly. "Can I be honest with you about something?" Please. I've had feelings for you for months. The confession came out steady, matter of fact, but I didn't say anything because I could tell you were healing. And I didn't want to rush you or pressure you or make this weird. I figured if something was meant to happen between us, it would happen naturally. When you were ready. Naomi felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. You've liked me for months, and you didn't say anything? I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. You'd been through enough. Ryan would have pushed. Would have made his feelings known immediately, would have pursued relentlessly, would have made it about what he wanted. But Caleb had just waited, had put Naomi's healing above his own desires, had given her space and time without making her feel guilty for needing it. I don't know if I can do this, Naomi whispered. I'm so scared. Of getting hurt again, of trusting the wrong person again, of being too broken to ever have something normal and healthy. Caleb reached for her hand, slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he held it gently. Then we'll go slow as you need. And if at any point you need to stop, we stop. No pressure, no expectations, no timeline. What if I never fully trust you? What if I'm always checking your phone and questioning where you are, and then we'll work through it. Together. Caleb's grip tightened slightly. I'm not going anywhere, Naomi. I'm not going to get scared and cheat. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to make you regret taking a chance on me. How can you promise that? Because that's who I am. My word matters to me. If I commit to you, I'm all in. That's not negotiable. Naomi wanted to believe him. She also wanted to protect herself. She wanted to take the leap, and she wanted to run away. She wanted everything and trusted nothing. Can we just start with coffee? She asked. Like an official coffee date, not a project meeting, an actual date. Caleb smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had been steadily breaking down Naomi's defenses for 6 months. I would love that. How's Tuesday? Tuesday works. They stood there, hands linked, watching kids celebrate a project about kindness and community, both of them terrified and hopeful in equal measure. Naomi didn't know if she could trust again. She didn't know if healing was possible. She didn't know if Caleb would turn out to be different from Ryan or just better at hiding his flaws. But for the first time in over a year, she was willing to find out. As Naomi drove home that evening, one question circled through her mind on an endless loop. When you've been shattered by betrayal, how do you know if someone is genuinely trustworthy? Or if you're just fooling yourself again because you're desperate to believe love can be real? She didn't have the answer. But on Tuesday, she was going to show up for coffee anyway, and maybe that was enough. The first official date with Caleb should have been simple. Just coffee, just conversation, just two people seeing if there was something real beneath months of careful friendship. But when you've been betrayed so completely that your nervous system treats vulnerability like a threat to survival, nothing is ever simple. So the question Naomi couldn't stop asking herself as she sat across from Caleb that Tuesday evening wasn't, do I like him? She already knew she did. The real question was far more terrifying. Could she actually let herself trust him? Or would her trauma destroy this before it even began? Their first 3 months of dating felt like learning to walk after a devastating accident. Every step required conscious effort. Every movement came with the fear of falling. But Caleb had meant what he said about going slow, and he proved it not with words, but with relentless, unwavering patience. When Naomi asked to see his phone 2 weeks into dating, heart pounding, fully expecting him to get defensive or angry or suspicious, Caleb simply handed it to her without hesitation. Password is 0817, he said calmly. My parents' anniversary. Look at whatever you want. Naomi scrolled through his messages, his photos, his email, feeling guilty and compelled in equal measure. She found nothing. Normal conversations with his sister about their mom's birthday, group texts with college friends planning a hiking trip, work emails about student cases, appropriately professional. When she handed the phone back, shame burning in her chest, Caleb just said, "Feel better?" Not sarcastically, not defensively, just genuinely wanting to know if the transparency had helped ease her anxiety. I'm sorry, Naomi had whispered. I don't know why I can't just believe you. You've been hurt. Caleb had replied simply. It makes sense. I'm not offended. When Naomi interrogated him about his whereabouts, where were you? Who were you with? Why didn't you text me back immediately? Caleb answered every question with specific, verifiable details. He showed her receipts. He sent photos of where he was. He introduced her to his friends so she could put faces to names. He never once got angry at her suspicion, never once made her feel crazy for needing proof. He just provided it, over and over, until the pattern of his honesty became impossible to deny. When Naomi had panic attacks, triggered by a romantic movie or a wedding invitation, or sometimes nothing at all, just the memory of Ryan's face when he'd admitted to 6 months of lies, Caleb would hold her and talk her through breathing exercises he'd learned as a counselor. I'm not him, he'd remind her quietly. I will never be him. You're safe with me. And slowly, incrementally, Naomi started to believe it. But belief and trust aren't the same thing. And Naomi learned that lesson painfully in month 4 when Caleb made his first mistake. He told her he was going to his friend Derek's house for game night, a regular Thursday evening thing he did twice a month. Naomi had said that was fine, told him to have fun, tried to act like a normal girlfriend who didn't immediately spiral into worst-case scenarios the second her boyfriend was out of sight. For 3 hours, everything was fine. And then Naomi texted Caleb a funny meme and he didn't respond. 20 minutes passed, then 40, then an hour. By hour 2, Naomi's anxiety had transformed into full-blown panic. He was lying. He wasn't at Derek's house. He was with another woman. This was exactly how it had started with Ryan, the slow erosion of responsiveness, the gradual pulling away, the excuses about dead phone batteries or being busy or not seeing the messages. When Caleb finally responded, 3 hours after her initial text, Naomi was pacing her apartment, tears streaming down her face, fully convinced that she'd been a fool to trust again. Where were you? She demanded when he called. Why didn't you answer? I'm so sorry, Caleb said, and she could hear genuine distress in his voice. My phone died and I didn't have a charger. I should have borrowed someone's phone to text you. That's completely on me. You're lying. The accusation came out flat, certain. I'm not lying, Naomi. I'm at Derek's house right now. I can FaceTime you if you want proof. I can have Derek confirm. I don't need Derek to lie for you too. There was a pause. Then Caleb said quietly, I'm going to FaceTime you right now. Okay? Just give me a chance to show you I'm telling the truth. The video call came through seconds later. Caleb's face filled the screen, concerned and apologetic, and behind him, Naomi could see Derek's living room. The TV paused on a video game. 2 other guys she recognized from photos as Caleb's friends Jason and Marcus. Caleb panned the camera around the room, introduced everyone, showed her the board game spread across the coffee table, even held up his phone to show her the dead battery icon. See? He said gently. I'm exactly where I said I'd be. I messed up by not making sure you could reach me, because I know you worry. That's my fault, but I promise you, I'm telling the truth. Naomi felt the panic drain out of her, replaced by crushing embarrassment. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I can't just believe you. Because someone broke your trust, Caleb interrupted. It's going to take time to rebuild. I understand that. I'm not mad, Naomi. I'm just sorry I worried you. After they hung up, Naomi sat on her floor and cried. Not because Caleb had lied, but because he hadn't. Because he'd proven himself yet again. Because she was so damaged that she'd accused an honest man of deception when his only crime was a dead phone battery. How long would Caleb's patience last? How many times could she doubt him before he got tired of proving himself? How much trauma could one relationship sustain before it collapsed under the weight? 7 months into their relationship, something shifted. Naomi couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it happened. There was no dramatic revelation or cinematic breakthrough. But somewhere between month 6 and month 7, she realized she'd stopped checking Caleb's phone, stopped interrogating his schedule, stopped assuming the worst every time he was late or distracted or busy. The anxiety didn't disappear entirely. Trauma doesn't work that way, but it quieted, became manageable. transformed from a constant scream into an occasional whisper. They were watching a movie at Caleb's apartment one evening, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, when the realization hit her with startling clarity. "I trust you," she said suddenly. Caleb looked down at her, surprised. "What?" "I trust you, Caleb. I don't know exactly when it happened, but I do. I actually trust you." The words felt foreign in her mouth, not because they were untrue, but because she'd spent so long believing she'd never be able to say them again to anyone. Caleb's expression softened into something that looked like relief and joy and pride all mixed together. "That means everything to me," he said quietly. "I know how hard you've worked to get here. I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that to someone again. After Ryan, I thought I was just permanently broken. You were never broken. You were hurt. There's a difference." Caleb kissed her forehead. "And I'm honored that you can say it to me." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and Naomi felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of safety. Not the void where trust used to be, but the gradual rebuilding of something solid and real. 1 year into their relationship, Naomi faced the ultimate test of her healing. Caleb's ex-girlfriend Morgan, the one who'd moved to London for work, the one he'd broken up with amicably years before, reached out to say she was back in town visiting family and wanted to catch up. The old Naomi, the broken, terrified version who'd existed for that terrible year after Ryan, would have panicked, would have demanded Caleb not see her, would have assumed this was the beginning of the end, that every relationship eventually circled back to a previous love, that she was just a placeholder until someone better came along. But Caleb handled it with the same transparency and consideration he'd shown from day one. He came to Naomi immediately, showed her Morgan's text message, and said, "She wants to grab coffee and catch up. I told her I'm in a relationship, and I wanted to check with you first before responding. If you're uncomfortable, I won't go. If you want to come with me, you're more than welcome. If you're okay with it, I'll go for an hour and keep you updated the whole time. You get to decide what you're comfortable with." Naomi thought about it carefully, examined her feelings without judgment. She felt a flutter of anxiety, yes. That was normal, expected, human. But underneath the anxiety was something new, trust. Trust that Caleb had told her about Morgan immediately, instead of hiding it. Trust that he'd given her agency in the decision, instead of making it unilaterally. Trust that his past relationship was exactly what he said it was, amicable, over, friendly but not romantic. "Go," Naomi said. "Catch up with her." "I trust you." Caleb studied her face. "Are you sure? I don't want you to say yes just because you think it's what I want to hear. I'm sure. You can have coffee with your ex-girlfriend without me panicking." "I'm proud of myself for that, actually." Caleb smiled, that beautiful, genuine smile that had been steadily healing Naomi's heart for a year. "I'm proud of you too." He went to coffee with Morgan that Saturday. Throughout the hour, he sent Naomi updates she hadn't even asked for. "Just got here. Morgan says hi and says she's happy I found someone." 20 minutes later, talking about her job in London. "She's doing really well. Sounds happy." And finally, heading out in 10 minutes. "Love you." When Caleb got home, Naomi was reading on the couch, genuinely calm. No pacing. No spiraling thoughts. No detective work or social media stalking. Just a woman waiting for her boyfriend to come home from coffee with a friend. "How are you feeling?" Caleb asked, sitting down beside her. "Good. I mean, I was a little anxious at first, but I didn't spiral. I just trusted you." Naomi set her book down and looked at him. "That's huge for me. A year ago, I would have convinced myself you were leaving me for her. I would have packed a bag and run before you could hurt me first. But today I just trusted that you'd come home, and you did." "I will always come home to you," Caleb said simply. "That's a promise." And Naomi believed him. 2 years after that devastating phone call from Jenna, 2 years after Ryan destroyed everything Naomi believed about love, she stood in front of her bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Not because she looked different physically, but because the fear that had lived behind her eyes for so long had finally faded. She was in therapy and actually doing the work instead of just showing up. She'd processed the trauma, understood that Ryan's betrayal was about his character, not her worth. She'd learned that one person's deception didn't mean everyone would deceive her. She'd rebuilt her confidence, her sense of self, her ability to be in a relationship without constant anxiety choking the joy out of every moment. And when Caleb proposed, 2 years into their relationship, in their kitchen while they were cooking dinner together, nothing elaborate or staged, just him getting down on one knee between the stove and the refrigerator and saying, "Naomi, I love you. I love your strength and your resilience and the trust you've given me. I promise to spend every day earning that trust. Will you marry me?" Naomi said yes without hesitation, without fear, without waiting for the other shoe to drop, because she'd learned the difference between Ryan's performative romance and Caleb's quiet consistency. She'd learned that real love wasn't about grand gestures and beach proposals and elaborate performances. It was about showing up, being honest, matching your actions to your words, day after day after day until the pattern became undeniable. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony that was nothing like the wedding Naomi had planned with Ryan. No 847 Pinterest pins, no venue booked a year in advance, no elaborate details designed to create the perfect fairy tale. Just 40 people who loved them, a backyard ceremony at Caleb's parents' house, and vows that made everyone cry. "Caleb," Naomi said, hands shaking as she held his, "you taught me that trust isn't about never being afraid. It's about choosing to believe in someone, even when fear whispers doubts. You showed me what consistency looks like, what honesty looks like, what real love looks like. You were patient while I healed. You never gave up on me even when I gave you every reason to. You proved through your actions, not your words, that not everyone lies, that not everyone leaves, that some people mean what they say and stay when things get hard. Thank you for being the man who taught me I could trust again. I trust you with my whole heart, and I will spend the rest of my life showing you that your patience was worth it." There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. Caleb's mom was sobbing. Tyler, now 18 and thriving, grinned through tears. Even Caleb's voice shook when he spoke his own vows about loving Naomi through her healing and being honored to be the person she chose to trust. When they kissed as husband and wife, Naomi felt something she'd never experienced with Ryan, even in their best moments: certainty. Not the naive certainty of someone who doesn't know betrayal exists, but the hard-won certainty of someone who'd been shattered and rebuilt herself stronger. Someone who'd learned to trust wisely instead of blindly. Someone who'd found a partner worthy of that trust. Naomi's story isn't about finding a perfect man who healed all her wounds. It's about finding an honest man who was patient while she healed herself. It's about learning that betrayal doesn't have to be a life sentence. That trust can be rebuilt with the right person through consistency, transparency, and time. That your trauma doesn't make you unlovable, it just makes you selective about who deserves your love. Ryan taught Naomi what betrayal looks like. Caleb taught her what real love looks like, and the difference between the two saved her life. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Have you struggled to trust again after being hurt? Or maybe you're the Caleb in someone's story, the person trying to love someone who's been broken by someone else's lies. Drop a comment below and share your story. How did you rebuild trust, or how are you helping someone else rebuild theirs? Let's create a community where we talk honestly about healing from betrayal and learning to love again. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about love, loss, and finding your way back to hope. Because everyone deserves a love story where trust is earned, not just promised. Everyone deserves their Caleb. And everyone who's been hurt deserves to know that healing is possible, if you're brave enough to try again.